No maid lasted with the Arab executive's new wife, until one African woman did the unthinkable. The palace was perfect. The gardens were sculpted, the tiles polished daily, the staff handpicked and highly paid. But no maid ever lasted more than 2 weeks, not since the new wife arrived. Elegant, icy, and impossibly demanding, she dismissed dozens with a flick of her fingers. The Arab executive, Ziad al-Rashid, watched silently as every one of them walked away, some in tears, others in anger, until one day, a quiet African woman named Nuru stepped through the door. No one expected her to last a single afternoon, but what she did in that house would shake the very foundations of that marriage and uncover a truth that had been hidden behind marble walls for years. What happened behind those golden doors? And why did this maid refuse to leave when everyone else ran? Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the rest of this unforgettable story of power, pain, and the woman who changed everything. The Al-Rashid estate was more than just a home. It was a fortress of prestige, carved in Jerusalem stone and wrapped in glass. Every corner reflected wealth, from imported Carrara marble floors to the Persian silk rugs that absorbed your footsteps. Every servant, every chef, every gardener walked on eggshells, not because of Ziad al-Rashid, the billionaire oil executive who owned it all, but because of the woman he'd married 6 months ago. Layla, she was beautiful, that kind of distant, flawless beauty that made people nervous. A former fashion consultant from Monaco, she had cheekbones as sharp as her tongue. And since the day she arrived, she'd made it clear no one was ever good enough. Maids were dismissed over folded towels. Cooks fired for forgetting to sprinkle mint on her tea. The security guard at the front gate, gone after waving too slowly. No one lasted, not even the most seasoned staff. Ziad didn't interfere. He barely looked up from his laptop when Layla complained. He'd changed since the wedding, withdrawn, sharper in meetings, colder in silence. His closest advisors whispered about it. His own sister refused to visit. But on that quiet Monday morning, everything changed. She arrived without much of presence, a thin, dark-skinned woman with her head slightly bowed, wearing simple white sneakers and a long beige dress. Her name was Nuru. She had been hired by the head of staff out of desperation. No agency would send new candidates anymore. They all knew the turnover rate. She won't last until dinner, the butler mumbled to himself as he helped her carry her small suitcase to the staff quarters. Nuru didn't say much. Her eyes scanned every detail of the estate, not with awe, but with calculation. She noticed the fingerprints on the gold handles, the uneven fluff of the pillows, the watermarks on the hallway vase. She was used to reading homes like people. This one was angry. By noon, Layla had summoned her to the main bedroom. The suite was massive, with ivory curtains flowing like a gown and a perfume you could taste. Layla stood by the mirror, dabbing moisturizer on her neck. She didn't turn around. "You're the new one?" "Yes, madam," Nuru said calmly. "Make the bed," Layla ordered, "and don't wrinkle the ham like the last idiot." Nuru moved efficiently, her hands precise. She didn't speak unless asked. She straightened every corner, fluffed every pillow with the same care she once gave her ailing grandmother back home in Nairobi. Her hands moved with purpose. And something else. Intention. Layla glanced sideways. "You've done this before?" "Yes, madam." "Don't yes, madam me," she snapped. "Speak with clarity. Did you work in a house this size?" "Yes, in Lagos, and once in Doha." "Humph. And why are you here now, so far from home?" Nuru met her gaze. "To work, to provide for my son." That answer caught something in Layla's throat just for a second, but it vanished quickly, replaced by her usual frost. "We'll see if you're as useful as you sound. If not, you'll be gone by Friday." Nuru nodded. "Yes, madam." But she didn't flinch. By day 3, whispers filled the staff kitchen. "She's still here?" "She's cleaning the gallery now. Alone." She even folded Layla's robe without being told. Ziad noticed it, too. Not in words. He wasn't a man who wasted breath. But he saw the way his shirts were pressed just the way his late mother had liked them, the way the towels were stacked in symmetrical order, the way the household, for the first time in months, didn't feel like a war zone. He asked his assistant, "What's the name of the new maid?" "Nuru, sir." He nodded once and said nothing more. That night, thunder rolled across the horizon. Storms in the desert were rare. But when they came fast and without apology. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Nuru, who had been polishing the brass fixtures in the corridor, froze. From the end of the hallway, a sound echoed, not thunder, sobbing, not loud, just muffled. She followed it quietly, down the corridor, past the dining hall, and into the private sunroom, the one no one ever entered after dark. There, curled into the corner of a velvet couch, was Layla. Her back was to the door, her bare feet tucked under her robe. Her shoulders trembled. Nuru paused. A sensible maid would walk away. Tell no one. Pretend she didn't see the cracks in the Ice Queen. But Nuru stepped forward anyway. "Madam." Layla turned, startled. Her eyes were glassy, rimmed red. But when she saw Nuru, she straightened instantly. "What are you doing here?" "I heard a sound," Nuru replied softly. "You were spying?" "No, just concerned." "Concerned?" Layla scoffed. "You're a maid. You clean floors. Don't pretend to understand anything more than that." Nuru didn't move. "I clean floors, yes. But I've also buried a child. I've known the silence after screaming. I know what pain smells like." For a moment, the rain tapped louder than either of them spoke. Then Layla's voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "He doesn't look at me anymore." Nuru blinked. "Your husband?" Layla nodded, her lip trembling. "He married me. He gave me everything. But now I'm invisible. I try to be perfect, elegant, strong. But I feel like a stranger in my own home." It was the first time she had said something human. And Nuru, instead of answering with sympathy, asked the one question no one had dared to ask her. "Were you ever happy, Madame Layla? Before this house, before him?" Layla didn't answer. Her eyes dropped, and that silence said everything. Down the hallway, Ziad stood in the shadow of the stone archway, watching to the half-open door. He had gone to find a book. What he found was a maid speaking to his wife, not as a servant, but as an equal. And more importantly, his wife was actually listening. For the first time since their wedding, Ziad saw a glimpse of the woman he had fallen in love with. Not the mannequin, not the performance, but Layla. Something in him shifted. He didn't step into the room. Not yet, but he didn't walk away either. Because suddenly, the stranger in his house, the maid no one expected to last a day, was starting to change everything. And what she was about to uncover next would not only shake the marriage, but reveal a secret buried deep beneath the Al-Rashid estate. By morning, the house was unusually quiet. Nuru moved through her routine without hesitation. She scrubbed the sinks with lemon oil, arranged the fresh lilies in the foyer, and organized the cutlery drawer that no one ever used. But even as her hands worked, her mind was still in that sunroom. In the silence that followed Layla's confession, something had shifted, and not just for Layla. The staff felt it. The cook hummed again. The head butler, normally rigid, offered Nuru coffee without being asked. The guards nodded when she passed. It was as if peace had slipped through the front gates on the tail of the storm. But it didn't last long. At precisely noon, Ziad al-Rashid stood in the center of the glass atrium. His arms were crossed. The sleeves of his black shirt rolled to his elbows. The sun haloed him like a crown. He had summoned Layla. She arrived 10 minutes late, dressed in a linen blouse that hung too perfectly on her narrow frame. Her lips were painted wine red, but they did not smile. "You wanted to speak," she said flatly. Ziad didn't speak right away. His eyes, sharp and unreadable, studied her. "Something happened last night," he finally said. Layla's chin rose defensively. "If this is about the maid." "It is," he cut in. "You cried." She saw it. Her jaw tensed. "I didn't ask her to watch." She didn't run. She listened. That's rare in this house. Layla's lips curled into something cold. So now you're praising maids? Ziad exhaled slowly. No, I'm acknowledging something I hadn't noticed until now. Someone sees you, Layla, and it's not me. The words stung more than she admitted. I don't need be seen, she muttered. Ziad leaned closer. Yes, you do, and you always did. But I've been too buried in business and silence to remember how. She blinked, stunned. For once, Ziad was looking at her. Really looking, but it was too late to answer. The damage wasn't just between them anymore. It was inside the house. Watching, waiting. That evening, Nuru walked into the laundry room and found something strange. A scarf, crushed in the corner, soaked in something dark. She picked it up carefully. Blood. Not a lot, but fresh. Still wet at the edges. Her brow furrowed. She looked around. No trace of broken glass. No sign of injury. Just silence. She placed the scarf in a plastic bag and tucked it into the back pocket of her apron. And that night, she didn't sleep. The next morning, Ziad requested tea in his study, something he rarely did. Nuru prepared the tray herself. Saffron green tea, dates with pistachio dust, and a slice of warm almond cake. When she arrived, he was seated at his desk, reviewing documents. But as soon as he heard her steps, he stopped. You, he said without looking, you spoke with my wife last night. Nuru set the tray down gently. Yes, sir. You comforted her. I only listened. He nodded. That's more than I've done. She looked at him, unsure she was allowed to reply. But his voice softened. She used to be vibrant, laughter in every corner. But something changed after Paris. Nuru tilted her head slightly. Paris? Ziad's hand froze on his pen. She lost someone. A man. I never asked questions. I thought giving her comfort and stability would be enough. Nuru's heart paused. Was she in love with him? She asked. Ziad's eyes lifted to meet hers, and there was a flicker of pain. I don't know, he admitted. She never said his name. Later that evening, as Nuru changed the linen in the main bedroom, she noticed something strange on Layla's vanity. A tiny box. Jewelry, perhaps. Curious, she glanced at the open lid. Inside wasn't gold. It was a photo, a torn photograph, worn at the edges. A man, smiling, holding a woman who looked like Layla, but not quite. Younger, fuller, happier. Behind the photo, a thin paper was folded. A receipt, dated 4 months ago. Paris, a private clinic, one that specialized in trauma recovery. Nuru's hand shook. She placed the box exactly as it was, backing away as if it might explode. There was more to this marriage than cold shoulders and long silences. There was pain hidden behind imported marble and designer gowns. And Layla wasn't just difficult. She was grieving something that hadn't healed. By week's end, the estate staff had grown eerily comfortable with Nuru. She never gossiped, never overstepped, never lingered. But they began to watch her, as if she held the pulse of the entire household. And perhaps, in a way, she did. But that changed the moment Layla's scream shattered the dawn. It was just after sunrise. The call came from the West Wing. Nuru rushed down the hallway, barefoot, robe half-tied. The butler was already there. So were 2 guards. Layla stood in the corridor, trembling, a hand against her mouth. On the wall behind her, written in what looked like red ink, but smelled metallic, was a word. Liar. Bold. / wet. Ziad arrived seconds later, half-dressed, eyes storming. What is this? He barked. Layla pointed, breathless. I woke up and found it. On the wall. No one was in the room but me. Ziad turned to guards. Check every entrance. Review every camera. I want to know who did this. One of the guards glanced at the writing. Sir, that's blood. Gasps echoed. Nuru stood frozen. The scarf. The blood on the scarf. Suddenly, it wasn't just a mysterious stain in the laundry room. It was a warning. And someone in this house wasn't who they said they were. That evening, Nuru brought the plastic bag to Ziad. I found this 3 nights ago. In the laundry room. I didn't know what it meant. Ziad opened the bag and frowned. Why didn't you bring it to me immediately? I wasn't sure what I was seeing. Ziad narrowed his eyes. You're not just a maid, are you? Nuru didn't flinch. I'm a mother, a widow, a woman who's cleaned houses since I was 15. I see things. I feel them before they happen. Ziad leaned back in his chair. So what are you feeling now? Nuru looked at the door, then back to him. Someone in this house wants Layla to fall apart, but not because she's cruel, because she's guilty. Ziad's breath caught, and suddenly, the walls of his palace didn't feel so safe anymore. The blood had barely dried on the wall before the house fell into silence again. Only this time, it was different. Before, silence had meant tension. Now it meant fear. The guards did not speak unless spoken to. The maids walked faster down hallways. Even the chef, once loud and theatrical, now prepared every dish in nervous quiet. The estate's grandeur seemed to press inward, suffocating those within its walls. And Ziad? He didn't say a word to his wife for 2 days. Not about the blood. Not about the word carved into the paint. Not even about the photo Nuru had mentioned, though he had, privately, begun researching that clinic in Paris. Nuru, meanwhile, had gone into observation mode. She began taking careful note of Layla's habits. When she woke, when she walked alone, what time she disappeared into the garden, whether she ate, and if so, how much, and more importantly, who came and went through the service entrance. And that's when she noticed him. A man in a tan coat, tall, European, early 40s, with thinning hair and sunglasses that didn't quite match the cloudy weather. She spotted him from the laundry window at precisely 3:12 p.m. on a Thursday. He didn't enter through the front. He walked directly to the east wing and was buzzed in. 15 minutes later, he was gone, and Layla didn't emerge from her room for the rest of the day. That night, as Ziad poured himself a rare glass of scotch in the sitting room, Nuru stepped inside quietly. She didn't speak at first, but Ziad didn't need prompting. She's unraveling, he said without turning around. Nuru stood still, or being unraveled. He glanced at her, lips pressed. I saw him too, the man in the coat. His name is Jean-Pierre Delacourt, psychiatrist, Parisian. I had someone look into it. A therapist? Nuru asked. No, Ziad replied bitterly. A manipulator. He once ran a therapy clinic for the elite. Now he consults with families, quietly, for a price. Layla saw him after her father died. I didn't know she still called him. Why keep it secret? Ziad finally met her eyes. Because she thinks I wouldn't understand. Or worse, stop her. And would you? Ziad paused. No, he said softly. Not if it helps her heal. But if he's the one behind this message on the wall, he's not here to help. He's here to control. Meanwhile, Layla sat cross-legged on the carpet of her private dressing room. The photo box opened before her. Her hands trembled as she traced the edge of the picture. The man in it, he had once promised to the world. Promised her freedom, then vanished. The pain didn't come all at once. It arrived in waves, and each wave left her emptier than before. She hadn't told Ziad everything, not even half. Not about the engagement she broke to be with him, not about the pregnancy, not about the letter that arrived 2 months before the wedding and disappeared before she could respond. She closed the box, and this time she locked it. The next morning, a package arrived at the estate gate. No return address, no name. The guards, hesitant, brought it to Ziad. He opened it himself. Inside was a small velvet pouch and a note. Ziad, you can lock doors, but you can't lock truths. She knows, and so do I. Jay. Ziad stared at the note for a full minute before reaching into the pouch. It was a pendant, small, simple, with the initials LR engraved delicately in the gold. He had never seen it before, but when he handed it to Nuru, she flinched. This was in the photograph, she said, around the man's neck. That evening, Nuru caught Layla standing outside the garden wall. She didn't approach. She waited. Eventually, Layla spoke without turning. "Do you believe in ghosts, Nuru?" The question caught her off guard. "No, madam. I believe in pain that doesn't die." Layla smiled faintly. "Then you understand." Silence stretched between them. "I'm not as strong as I pretend," Layla whispered. "You're stronger," Nuru replied, "because you haven't collapsed yet. But you will if you keep burying something alive inside you." Layla looked at her then, really looked. "I killed someone, Nuru," she said quietly. Nuru's eyes widened. "In Paris," Layla continued, her voice barely audible. "Before Zad, before this life, I was pregnant. I hid it. I tried to run away. And one night, I took something I shouldn't have. A combination of pills. I wanted to sleep." She stopped, choking on the memory. "But I woke up, and he didn't." "Who?" Nuru asked. "My son." Her knees gave way. Nuru rushed forward, catching her. The truth collapsed out of her mouth, like poison spilling from a cracked bottle. "I named him Ryan. He was born early. Too early. I never held him. Never buried him. They cremated him before I even left the hospital. My father paid everyone to cover it up." Nuru held her silently, heart pounding. "I thought marrying Zid would erase the pain," Layla said, "but it only buried it deeper." "And Jean-Pierre?" Nuru asked. "He promised me closure. He lied." Nuru's voice turned sharp. "He's not trying to help you, Layla. He's punishing you. And someone in this house is helping him do it." Layla looked up, her eyes burning. "Then help me stop him." That night, Nuru went to security office. She asked to review the footage from the past 2 weeks. The guard resisted until she showed him the note Ziad had received, the pendant, the initials. It didn't take long. Footage showed Jean-Pierre entering the house 4 times in 10 days, always through the East Wing, always escorted by Amira, the head of housekeeping, a woman who had worked in the Al-Rashid estate for nearly 15 years. Trusted, silent, loyal, or so they thought. The next morning, Nuru entered the kitchen at sunrise. Amira stood by the stove, slicing dates. Nuru approached with quiet steps. "You've known Layla longer than anyone here," Nuru said. Amira didn't look up. "I served her mother before her." "Then why bring him into house? Why betray her like this?" Amira's hand froze. "I didn't betray her," she said coldly. "I protected her. By letting Jean-Pierre send threats, bloody messages on her walls, anonymous packages to her husband." Amira turned. Her eyes were cold. "You don't understand these people. You think love and silence are enough. They're not." She was breaking and no one noticed. Not even Ziad. Jean-Pierre was the only one who saw the real wound. Jean-Pierre exploited it. Nuru snapped. "And what are you doing?" Amira spat. "You think cleaning her sheets gives you insight? You're a maid. Nothing more." "I'm the only one who listened when no one else dared," Nuru said firmly. And for the first time, Amira wavered. Just slightly, before turning away. But Nuru knew now. The next step was clear. She had to get Jean-Pierre out. For good. And to do that, she needed Ziad's help. But she had no idea that Ziad himself was about to receive an offer, one that would test everything he believed about his wife and himself. Ziad al-Rashid was not a man easily shaken. He had closed oil deals during armed protests. He had sat at negotiation tables with warlords disguised as ministers. He had built empires with nothing but a signature and a stare. But the envelope in his hand made his fingers tremble. It had been slid under his study door sometime between midnight and 5 a.m., unmarked, inside a single sheet. Typed, clinical, Mr. Al-Rashid, we both know your wife is not stable. Her behavior threatens your legacy, your estate, and your public image. There's an alternative. I am prepared to submit documentation that would declare her unfit to manage any household, including yours. In exchange, a discreet payment will secure silence, and your name will remain untouched in the matter. You keep your estate. She disappears quietly. No scandal. No blood. Think carefully. JPD. Ziad stared at the page for a long time. The words didn't surprise him. The timing did. Jean-Pierre had waited until Layla was most vulnerable, then offered him the easiest way out. Cool, elegant, perfectly legal, and completely heartless. When Nuru entered the study later that morning to bring coffee, she found Zed seated at his desk, the letter folded beside the pendant on the wood. She told you, Nuru said quietly. He nodded. About Ryan, about Paris, about the pain she carries like glass in her lungs. And what do you feel? She asked. Ziad's jaw worked silently. Anger. At her. At myself. At the man who dares to think he can buy peace. Will you take the offer? He looked up. His eyes, so often still and unreadable, burned. No, because if I sign that paper, I become the man who left her at her lowest. And I already did that once. I won't do it again. Nuru's breath caught, but she nodded. Then she leaned closer. I need your help to get him out of this house. Ziad didn't hesitate. Tell me what to do. That afternoon, Nuru slipped into the guest wing under the pretense of refreshing towels. The real goal? Find Jean-Pierre's point of access. Where he met Amira. Where he left notes. Where he planted the fear. She found it in the smallest place possible. A drawer in the staff break room. Behind neatly stacked tea bags and napkins sat a black notebook. Inside dates, times, session notes, some written in French. Patient LR, paranoia, depressive episodes, unresolved trauma. Suggest increased reliance on guided therapy. Patient LR, reports recurring dreams of child crying. Explore guilt conditioning. Patient LR, exposure to triggering words proved effective. Liar, blood, Ryan. Nuru closed the book and felt bile rise in her throat. This wasn't therapy. It was psychological warfare. In the evening, Ziad summoned Amira to his office. She came without hesitation. You've worked for this family for 15 years, he began, pacing slowly. You helped raise my nephews. You served my mother until her last day. Why betray me? Amira didn't blink. I didn't betray you, sir. I protected what you abandoned. Ziad turned sharply. Excuse me? You stopped seeing her. You buried yourself in your business and left her to drown. She needed someone. He showed up. He manipulated her. Ziad growled, turned her guilt into a weapon. She was already bleeding. Amira said, he just showed her the cut. I should fire you right now. Amira didn't move. Then do it. But Ziad didn't. He turned to the window, voice low. Do you know what the real crime is, Amira? It's not the betrayal. It's that you let him inside this house without asking what he really wanted. And for the first time, Amira's voice faltered. I didn't know he would go this far. Zad turned. Now you do. She bowed. Then let me help fix it. Ziad studied her. You have one chance. No mistakes. Meanwhile, Nuru approached Layla in the garden, where she sat in silence beneath the olive tree. I found the notebook, she said. Layla closed her eyes. I already know what's in it. Do you know what he's doing to you? I do now, Layla said, but I'm afraid. Of what? That without him, I'll fall apart. Nuru crouched beside her. Or maybe without him, you'll finally be free. Layla looked at her, truly looked, and nodded. I want him gone. The plan was simple. Layla would invite Jean-Pierre for a final session. He would believe he still held power. Ziad would confront him privately, armed with a letter, the notebook, and the house's full security team. Amira would remain close, ready to confess her role if needed. And Nuru would stand behind it all, watching, listening, making sure none of them blinked. At exactly 10:03 a.m. the next morning, Jean-Pierre entered the estate, dressed in his usual tan coat, leather satchel in hand. Confident as ever, he was led to the east parlor, the most intimate, most soundproof room in the house. Layla sat waiting, calm, dressed in white. You look rested, he said, pouring himself water. I feel clearer, she replied. He smiled, too comfortably. Then my methods are working. Your methods, she said softly, have shown me who you really are. Jean-Pierre paused. Excuse me. Ziad stepped through the side door, flanked by 2 guards. I believe the lady said she's done with your therapy. Jean-Pierre rose slowly. This is highly inappropriate. What's inappropriate? Ziad said, placing the letter on the table, is trying to bribe a husband to institutionalize his wife. He held up the notebook. This alone is enough to destroy your license. But I don't want scandal. I want disappearance. Jean-Pierre's eyes narrowed. You wouldn't dare. I own property in 5 countries, Ziad said coldly. And I know people who disappear far more powerful men than you. The guard stepped forward. Jean-Pierre's confidence cracked. He reached for his bag, but Amira was already there, taking it from him. No more games, she said. I did this for her, Jean-Pierre insisted. To heal her. You did this. Nuru's voice came from the doorway. To control her. Jean-Pierre turned. Nuru stood with her hands folded, calm as ever. She's not broken. You are. There was a long pause. Then Ziad stepped forward and whispered, You have 10 minutes to leave this estate and never return. Or I swear, the next time you see daylight will be through a courtroom window. Jean-Pierre stared at Layla, but she didn't flinch. She didn't beg. She simply turned away. And that was the end of him. That night, Nuru passed by the study where Ziad sat alone. She paused at the doorway. You kept your promise, she said. Ziad looked up. So did you. She's strong, Nuru said, but she needs help rebuilding. So do I, Ziad replied. Then, almost reluctantly, Stay, please, not just as a maid. Nuru smiled softly. Then I'll stay, as what she needs me to be. And for the first time in months, the Al-Rashid estate exhaled. But just as the shadows began to lift, a phone buzzed. Ziad answered, a voice on the other end. Panicked. Urgent. Sir, we found something. In Jean-Pierre's bag. It wasn't just notes. It was the birth certificate. Ziad froze. The voice continued. It's for a boy named Ryan. But the father's name, it isn't blank. It says Ziad al-Rashid. And everything shattered all over again. Ziad's fingers went cold. The room felt like it had lost all air, like the stone walls had closed in just enough to crush his chest but not kill him. The voice on the phone kept speaking, but he no longer heard it. Repeat that, he said finally, his voice hoarse. There's a certified birth record from Paris, sir. The guard said. Jean-Pierre had it tucked in a hidden pouch in his bag. It's real. Official. The child's name is Ryan, and the father's name listed as yours. Ziad's entire world tipped sideways. He dropped into his chair. He didn't remember. He couldn't remember. A child? With Layla? When? Why would she? He ended the call. Nuru found him 20 minutes later, sitting in the dark. She didn't say anything at first. She just closed the door behind her and sat across from him, like she had 100 times with grieving strangers. Ziad finally broke the silence. She never told me. No, Nuru said softly. She let me think he belonged to someone else, that she lost him alone, that I wasn't part of that story. Nuru studied him. Maybe she believed you weren't. His eyes narrowed. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe at the time she didn't know, or didn't want to know. Ziad stood abruptly, pacing the room. She married me, lived under my roof, built a life with me while carrying that secret. Nuru's voice was firm now. You said it yourself, Ziad. You abandoned her emotionally. She didn't feel seen. That pain, it buries people, makes them believe their truth has no place in the light. He stopped, face tense, jaw clenched. I could have protected them both. Nuru looked at him, her eyes unwavering. Then you still can, but not through anger. Layla was on the rooftop terrace when he found her, wrapped in a pale shawl, barefoot, arms crossed. The wind tugged at her hair. The view stretched far across the desert hills, the gold fading into the soft pinks of early evening. She didn't turn when he approached. You know, she said quietly. Ziad stood behind her. Yes. Silence. I was 19, she began, her voice so low it nearly disappeared into the wind. We had just met. It was wild, beautiful, unreal. I found out 6 weeks after you left for London. I was too scared to call. And then my father found out first. Ziad's throat tightened. He told me to make it disappear, she said. Said no child of mine would come into the world unmarried. He took me to Paris. Signed papers. Paid clinics. Told everyone it was a routine medical trip. She paused. I tried to keep the baby. I really did. But I was young, alone, and when I finally had the courage to write to you, you never answered. Ziad stepped forward. I never got a letter. She turned. I left it with your assistant in Dubai. His breath caught. Khalid. Layla nodded. Khalid never gave me anything. Ziad's chest burned. He remembered that month. How chaotic it had been. How Khalid had been let go for a breach of trust. But no one had ever said what the breach was. He stole your voice, Ziad whispered. Yes, she said. And by the time I realized it, I had already buried my son. Tears slipped down her cheek. I hated you for years. Not because you left me, but because I believed you knew and didn't come. Ziad stepped closer. I would have crossed oceans, he said, his voice breaking. If I'd known, Layla, I would have been there. She met his eyes, and for the first time, they both saw it. The child who never got to exist between them. Not just a baby, but a life, a possibility, a family. Downstairs, Nuru stood by the marble railing, listening to the soft wind brush the courtyard. She knew what had happened without needing to hear the words. She saw it in Ziad's face when he came back down. The pain of loss, layered with guilt, but also something else. Purpose, the kind that only comes after devastation. He walked over to her. She needs time, he said. And you? Nuru asked. I need to rebuild the man I was supposed to be. She nodded once. Then start here, she said, handing him the birth certificate. He held it gently, like it might shatter. I'll file this under his name. Ryan Al-Rashid. Let it be known, somewhere, that he existed. Nuru smiled softly. That's all any soul wants, in the end, to be remembered. 3 days passed in near silence. No new visitors. No letters. No therapy sessions. The estate breathed again, slowly, cautiously. Layla remained in her suite, mostly silent. But one morning, Nuru entered and found her at the vanity, brushing her hair. No makeup, no performance. Just a woman facing her reflection. She turned to Nuru. I've spent years performing grief, she said. Maybe it's time I just feel it. You don't have to do it alone, Nuru replied. I know, but I need to start with myself. Nuru walked over and placed a small candle on the table. For Ryan, Layla lit it without a word. The flame flickered, soft, steady. Later that week, Ziad hosted a private dinner on the terrace. No guests, no staff, just Layla, Nuru, and 2 empty chairs, one symbolic, the other not. Ziad stood and raised a glass. I built empires, he said, but I forgot to build peace. He turned to Layla. We can't go back, but maybe if we're brave enough, we can build something honest now. She lifted her glass. For the truth, she said softly, and for the son who led us back to it. They drank. Nuru didn't. She stood and whispered, I'll give you both space. But Ziad touched her arm. Stay. And so she did. For that night, there were no lies, no secrets, only 3 souls, broken, healing, alive. But as the moon rose higher, a knock echoed at the gate. A courier, an envelope, this time from France. Inside, a final letter from Jean-Pierre, written weeks earlier. If you're reading this, then I've already lost. But let it be known, there is one more secret Layla never told you. She was never supposed to carry that child. The clinic was paid to terminate. She hid the pregnancy. She ran. She chose him. Over you. Ask her what she did in that final week in Paris. Ask her what she buried there. Ziad read it once, twice, then looked up at the woman he loved and realized the past wasn't finished with them yet. The candle still burned in Layla's bedroom when Ziad entered, the letter from France clutched in his hand. She looked up from her chair, sensing the shift in him instantly. "You received something," she said. He didn't answer at first. He walked to the window, opened it slightly, and let the desert air brush against his face. Then, without turning around, he asked, "What did you bury in Paris, Layla?" Her silence was long. Too long. Ziad finally turned to face her. "Jean-Pierre wrote to me before he vanished. He said the clinic was paid to terminate the pregnancy. But you ran. You hid the child. You chose Ryan over everything else." Layla's breath hitched. "He said there was still a secret left," Ziad continued. "One you never told anyone." Layla stood. Her eyes didn't flinch. "Because I didn't want anyone to dig it up." "Then tell me now." She walked to the small chest at the foot of the bed, opened it slowly. From inside, she pulled a worn notebook. Faded, French handwriting along the edges, and within it, a photo folded tightly between the pages. She handed them to Ziad. He looked. It was a picture of her, 8 months pregnant, seated on a park bench in Paris. A woman beside her, middle-aged, pale-skinned, red scarf, holding her hand. That woman, Layla said softly, was a midwife. I met her at the shelter where I hid after running from the clinic. Ziad listened, heart pounding. "She helped me deliver Ryan," she continued. "Not in a hospital, not with a birth certificate, but in a quiet corner of Montmartre, beneath a winter sun." She closed her eyes. "I held him, Ziad." He breathed. Just once, and then he stopped. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I buried him myself, illegally, behind the midwife's cottage. We marked it with a stone that said nothing, because saying something would mean someone might find him." Ziad sat down slowly. "All these years, and you carried that. I thought if I spoke it aloud, it would make it real, and if it became real, I wouldn't survive it." Ziad reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "There's more," she whispered. "The midwife, she wasn't just helping women. She was hiding them. From men. From systems. From shame. Jean-Pierre knew. He threatened her after I left. Told her if she ever contacted me, he'd have her arrested." Ziad clenched his fists. "Where's she now?" "She disappeared. Changed her name. I only found out 3 years ago. But by then, I was already wearing your ring. Already pretending none of it happened." They stood in the middle of the room, the candlelight dancing across the floor. "I never stopped loving you," she said, "even when I hated you, even when I thought you'd abandoned me. But loving you never erased what I did, or what I lost." Ziad stepped forward. "Then let's stop erasing it." He opened the drawer behind him, pulled out the official document, the corrected birth certificate, and placed it between them. "Let's give him a name," he said. "Let's give him a resting place. Let's give ourselves permission to remember." 1 month later, the Al Rashid estate stood still under a rare, gentle rain. In the private garden beyond the east wall, a place once reserved for silence, a single tree had been planted. Beneath it, a marble plaque. "Ryan Al Rashid. You breathed once, and it was enough to change everything." Ziad, Layla, and Nuru stood together beneath umbrellas. No guests, no cameras. Just them. Layla knelt first, her hand brushing the stone. "I brought flowers," she whispered. "Not because you need them, but because I do." Ziad stood behind her, silent, head bowed. When she stood, Nuru stepped forward. She lit a small lantern and placed it beside the plaque. "For the children who leave before we can know them," she said softly, "and for the parents who carry them forever." They stood in silence for several minutes, and then Ziad broke it. "I want to build something," he said, "in his name, a foundation, for single mothers, for lost voices, for anyone who ever needed someone to believe in them." Layla looked at him, not the businessman, not the executive, but the man who had finally stepped back into his own heart. "Yes," she said, "let's do that." Months passed. The mansion no longer felt like a museum. Rooms were used again. Doors remained open. Laughter occasionally echoed to the halls. Quiet, not constant, but honest. Layla began painting again. Zed visited the garden daily. Nuru stayed, not just as a maid, as part of the family. She taught the staff to listen, Not just the commands, but the silences. She reminded them that pain doesn't always announce itself loudly, and that sometimes the one who cleans the floors knows more about the house than anyone else inside. One evening, under warm lights and jasmine breeze, Ziad and Layla sat on the terrace. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Everything between them now was real, raw, unedited. They had rebuilt their life, not by forgetting the pain, but by facing it. And they had done it together. Ziad took her hand. "We named him," he whispered. Layla nodded. "And he named us." She looked up at the sky, and for the first time in years, her voice didn't tremble when she said, "Thank you for finding me again." He pressed her hand to his lips. "No," he said. "Thank you for not disappearing when I did." They sat in silence. Two souls, one story. And somewhere, far above them, a breath was remembered,